I was 22, so I think you need to look at like your decision making. I mean, Byron, this is like the same story with
Yeah.
both of us here.
But so,
I bought for location, sacrificed the house, and I did okay.
and
No,
if,
of course,
well, because Lisa's smart.
Lisa, smartest woman in real estate, Lisa Chinatti.
Just rubbing it in.
If you're not getting educated about local and national market conditions as a real estate agent, as someone in mortgages, title, an attorney, an accountant, anyone that gives any sort of professional advice, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. The band's back together this week. It's been a while since we've had Lisa Chinatti and Byron Lazine on here. And I'm grateful to talk with you guys. We got a lot to unpack. Lisa did some intel gathering down at a Zillow event this week in Charleston, while Byron and I held it down in the objection handling battle royale with Ricky Carruth and Ben Balak yesterday. But we got a jobs report first here, you two. I want to hit on this. And this was kind of the data we were waiting to get. So we saw 272,000 jobs added in the month of April, and unemployment rose to May, and unemployment rose to 4%. And it's the first time it's gotten that high since January of 2022. It's 0.1% higher than where it was in April. It was above expectation in terms of unemployment. Way more jobs getting added as well. So before we get into some of the stuff from the slides we got from Zillow that Lisa graciously shared with us here, I was surprised by the jobs report. What do you two think here? I mean, is this a surprise for you as well? I wasn't expecting to see that many added, but then again, unemployment rose a little bit as well.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say I was surprised. Although I was surprised to see that many added, I'm also surprised to see that unemployment rose. As somebody who's been trying to hire for a few key positions within the company, we've been getting tons of applicants, quality of applicants, maybe not quite what I would expect, but definitely a high volume of applicants. So just all interesting stuff. But I was shocked, especially by that number. It was a really big overage.
It's interesting that you say you've been trying to hire and then you haven't found the right applicant. I was golfing with a CEO of an IT company at my club here in Naples, and he asked me about the real estate market, what my thoughts were if there was an issue, coming up, and he led that into like, he's like, I don't know, I got a little bit of concern about white collar workers. I'm like, tell me why. He's like, we put out one position. It's not it's a good position, good income, but just kind of middle of the company position. And we got 400 applicants in less than 48 hours for this one position. He's like, that tells me there's 8 million job openings, which is the lowest in 3 years on that market as well. But it tells me there's a lot of people looking for this job. He's like, this isn't like a home run job. It's a good job. But he was just shocked at the sheer number of applicants. So when you see the 800 job openings, there's a lot of undesirable jobs. So I've got questions about these job numbers. So one, I was shocked at the 272,000, beating the Dow Jones expectations of 190,000, only because I saw expectations this week that it was going to come in under at 140. So that reading on Wall Street Journal influenced my, shock value here, I would say, thinking it's going to come in under based off what I was reading. These guys are wrong all the time, but 272,000 in May is what it came in at, according to this morning's release. That was up from 165,000 in April. The 4% unemployment going up to 4% isn't shocking to me, just based on those stories that I'm hearing. It's like, Lisa, there's tons of applicants. The pool for you isn't the right pool. For him, 400 applicants, just shocked that one position would drive that much interest. I think out of those 8 million job openings, we're not matching the right jobs available to the people who need a job. And you could go down a whole path on, what I'm talking about there. You can get into a whole immigration conversation with, are we bringing in the right people into this country to fill the jobs the high level jobs that we have available, or are we, legally bringing in enough people to fill other jobs? There's a whole discussion around that. But ultimately, I was surprised. And one of the reasons The 4% might surprise some. I'm not as surprised with that, just because I think the job market's been softening here for a while. Would be that Goldman Sachs, they just released their U.S. Economic and Financial Outlook this past week, and their updated version of this. And for them, for the labor market, the unemployment rate, they have averaging 3.8 this year. So 4 would be, 2 points higher than that. 2025, they have it going down to 3.7. 2026, they have it going down to 3.6. So, Goldman Sachs isn't projecting 4. There are other projections that say we'll get up over 4. Obviously, that's not what they want to hear leading into November. They want to stay sub 4. But there you go. That's what I got on that.
Well, if you look at we got a Fed meeting next week as well, and this data is always very timely when it comes out to that. You look at the CME Group and their projections that they put out about what's going to happen at the Fed meeting. It's a 99.4% chance as of this morning that we see rates stay where they are. And if you look at some of the comments afterwards, I mean, you saw the yield surge, right? The Treasury yields, stock market, stock market futures lost a little ground. And this has kind of been like the trend with all this economic data, where it's like you get one step forward, maybe 2 steps back, and we're just kind of stuck here. And I don't think stuck is the right word, but it's there's a lot of different things happening right now. It's not all going one direction. Byron, I know you've said this a lot. Lisa's got some slides here. I'd be curious what happened at the Zillow event, but I think you said a thin sheet of ice is what the economy looks like right now in our show prep. And there's a chart out there that was released at this Zillow event that Lisa shared, that there's early signs of financial stress that show 90-day delinquencies. So serious delinquency rates, credit cards, that's rising. You're seeing the same thing on auto loans. You're even seeing it tick up a little bit with mortgages. So when you see that stuff happen, you see unemployment jump up, even though these jobs get added. I tend to agree with you about the jobs. I mean, we're trying to hire for inside salespeople and appointment setters, and it's very interesting what's coming in, but there might be more to this report than we realize. And I think the Fed's going to be very even keeled next week, and maybe even a little hawkish.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I want to address my comments that you just shared before that we were talking about before the pod when I said thin sheet of ice. A couple things here that I'll comment on is the job numbers, 270,000. If you listen to a lot of analysts, that includes part-time jobs.
Yes.
So that has an impact. Again, what kind of jobs? We keep talking about the strong economy, a growing GDP, even though it slowed down quite a bit in quarter one. Unemployment being low, job openings being high. Look at these numbers here now in May. It's what you mentioned here, why the tenure went up, because more jobs isn't going to help the FOMC fight inflation. So we went from being sub 4.3 as of this morning, now up over 4.4 on the 10-year. That'll erase our gains on the 30-year this week as we go into the weekend. Why do I say thin sheet of ice? There's just, and we'll look at some of these charts, some of these early signs. These early signs, though, are bouncing off of nothing. When we talk about delinquencies, they're bouncing off of historic lows. So we got to slow down on that too a little bit. Why am I not a believer, would be a better way to say it, in this economy? Because anytime we come off of a situation like we did when you go back in history in 2001 and early 2021 rather, in 22 and late 20, you have a time frame where you have to recover from that. And we printed so much money. We put so much stress on the financial levers of this economy. And you just, at some point, you can't have that much debt that we're carrying. And the U.S. consumer is racking up debt. The U.S. consumer got used to, a lot of money in the system. Now that's been restricted. You see that in the numbers of existing home sales. We're in a 3-year recession. When you go back, and this is what Goldman Sachs, going back to that report that they pointed out, when you go back and look at this, this existing home sale numbers, You have to go back to 1978 to see 4 million existing home sales print, 4.09 then, 4.14 now. We had 223 million people in 1978 and 341 million people today. It's not that the dream has evaporated, although Jerome Powell might, not care if you have the dream of home ownership or not. Most people want to own a home. It's the fact that they're financially strapped to the point that they can't. We should be 4 million has always been the floor on existing home sales. But when you have 120 million more people, the new floor should probably really be 5 million. Not the case. So you go back in the last 25 years, you did see 4.1 million, 4.3 in 08 and 09. That was coming off the great financial crisis. That was coming off the mortgage collapse. When you adjust for workforce numbers, because you had a ton of unemployment then, it's shocking that we're only at 4.1 right now. We have so many more people working. So you go to 25, what does Goldman Sachs think? They think 4.2 million existing home sales. You go to 26, they think 4.3. You go to 27, they think 4.5. They're not projecting that so what does that say about the strength of the U.S. consumer? To me, it tells me there's some underlying issues here. I think that depending on how November goes, probably a bunch of it'll blow up in December and January. It is like either way, meaning either way December goes, it'll like somehow wait to blow up then. And I'm cautious. I was cautious at the beginning of the year. I said, even though you guys in that pod that I missed, you guys tried to paint me into a corner saying I said under the 30 year. I went back and listened. I said over. I have been out front of this thing telling everybody to shut up about 5% rates. Like, it's just going to be a bumpy road. We caused havoc printing trillions of dollars.
I think one of the other things, though, to your point with the home sales, I think that there's a couple of factors at play. I think we've talked about earlier how the increase in home sales in 20 and 21 was people who weren't ready to move but couldn't resist a really great opportunity. I think it's also important not to discount that consumers, homeowners are staying in their homes longer than ever before, which definitely creates a few less sales on that front as well. I think that there might be some data in the slides that I shared over. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that the data shows that the average US homeowner is staying in their home substantially longer than they have historically, which is going to impact the number of sales that take place year over year, not necessarily factoring in the growth of population, not arguing that side of it. But I don't think that you can totally overlook the fact that people are staying put longer. They're aging in place. They're tending to not make as many upward moves.
And one of the reasons for that, because I've moved a lot in the last 20 years. One of the reasons for that is moving. Nobody has solved for how crappy of a time moving is.
It sucks.
Nobody's solved for that problem. Changing the addresses, doing the setup in the house, the little things that go wrong. Moving is a huge issue. I mean, obviously that's not the major factor. And I want to get to some of those Zillow slides. I just want to show you guys this slide here. 2005, 7.1 million existing home sales. 2006, 6.5. Our peak during this run up was 2021 at 6.1 million. You had 5.6 in 20, and you only had 5 million in 22. You kind of hovered around from 13 to 19, 5.3 to 5.5. You're bouncing around. But we sat in the low fours, 08, 09, 10, 11, got up to 4.7 million in 13. And ultimately, that's what Goldman Sachs is predicting now, that we're going to hover for the next 3 or 4 years down back at the floor of 4 million. None of us are rooting for that. It's just one data point. Goldman Sachs has been wrong before, but that's what their viewpoint is right now on existing home sales. So the rates locking people in, the tenure that Lisa, I think you're going to share with us some of the information on one of the slides that you saw at Zillow this week.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through the slide deck, trying to find it here. There's a whole bunch in here that's actually fascinating. Wish I paid more attention.
I'm sure you
Yeah,
were
you were looking for
texting
the
and
yeah, you were
swinging
looking for the
little.
we move often but further, less often but
Oh
further. Is
yeah,
that the
yeah,
chart you
that
want?
one.
So I got it in
Yeah.
front of me here. I'll send this to Bobby. So it shows that the share of movers who move between states is rose from 2009 from 11.9% to 18.2%, and the share of total population that moved in the year is obviously a lot less. So you've seen that decline pretty significantly here on the purple. It's down to 8.4% in 2021. So down from much higher numbers there in the 11 and 12 range back in 2008, 2009. So that's been a steady decline while the moving out of state has been increased. I mean, I think part of that too, there was a lot of people that moved out of state during the pandemic, especially from the Northeast. We saw a mass exodus of folks going down south, down to like the Sun Belt, Florida. Byron, you made that move yourself, right? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of that going on as well, and I think you're seeing people retire also. I'll get this to Bobby here right now.
Yeah, so I pulled it up. So the fascinating thing, this is kind of what I was leading to, is if you look at, kind of going back historically in terms of the percentage of the population that would make a move each year, right? At the highs, it was, 20, 21%. And we're sitting now at like 8.4, 8.5% of the population making an annual move, which is significant when you look at how far off, and when you are able to see the chart and see how dramatic the fall is from the peak. It definitely kind of paints a picture in that respect too.
Yeah, and there was a chart I saw recently. I covered it on the hot sheet that during that like peak of 2021, that one of those years, over 12% of millennials made a move, and so now you're saying 8 is like the max percent of people that are willing to make a move. So things have shifted, right? The willingness to
Yes.
move, obviously the affordability to do such has shifted. And I really want knowledge brokers. I really want to caution everybody. If you're waiting for rates to be the impact on your business, or you're waiting for more existing home sales to happen to be the impact on your business, you could be waiting a long time. Like, is it possible that you could be waiting until 2007 for those headwinds to come help push your business along? Of course it's possible. Goldman Sachs has a lot of really smart people on this, and they're saying it's completely possible. In fact, that's their projection that they're printing and standing behind. Again, I'm not saying that this is going to be 100% accurate. I'm just saying that if you're waiting for that, we could be waiting for a very long time, and I wouldn't advise that. I'd advise going and taking care of what you can control right now, which is, in an environment like this, whether it lasts 3 years or whatever, it's increasing the output of the people that you're willing to help. So that's output in hours, that's output in conversations, that's output in database growth. That, it's just finding new ways to manage that. Can you leverage the tools that you have to help you move faster and organize better and all of that? Yes, you need to do all of that.
Well, it's not just the output, Byron. It's also I mean, we did that role play yesterday. It's the quality of conversations. I mean, if you're not able to guide these folks in a way that makes them, you're genuinely curious about what they're trying to accomplish, and you're giving them real advice backed by data. I mean, you're talking about agents waiting. Well, what about the sellers and buyers that say they want to wait? I mean, they could be waiting a very long time. And we went through that stuff yesterday. I'd encourage everyone to go check out the YouTube link. Hopefully we can link that up here, because that was pretty in-depth stuff. And you can't just rely on the market carrying your business anymore as an agent. Those days are over. This is going to be a lot more like that stretch from 2008 to 2012, where you're working with someone 6-7 months. You're in bed with these people longer, whether it's a listing or it's a buyer. Lisa, we were talking this morning. You've got listings that aren't selling in the first weekend, right? Like we're seeing that too. We're having to have these price adjustment conversations, and we're getting traffic. It's not like there's nobody looking. So you've got to learn how to navigate those things and guide people, because there's still the homes that are going to sell fast in any market, and then there's the other homes that don't. So if you're not really like practicing and role playing, and we were talking about this yesterday, the goal of the role play isn't like to have like some shock value comment that's going to convince somebody to do something. That's not what role play is. That's not what scripting is. It's about guiding people and asking questions. So it's output and then skill building combined. And that's what knowledge brokers, we're really seeing them have a lot of success right now.
I have a story I want to share on Lisa. You saying, hey, homes aren't selling in the first weekend. Well, if you're down in, Florida or Arizona or Texas, you're like, yeah, no kidding. They're not selling in the first, second, third, or fourth weekend. But yeah, for the Northeast, it's now just starting to, it's those early signs, just like we're talking about the early signs of the consumer having stress. It's those early signs of a market that's shifting. I had a client who I helped, I think 4 years ago, buy a property. They were out of New York, came to Connecticut, and then they were kind of done with the Connecticut thing, put their house on the market. I just pulled it up, put their home on the market on May 8th at a very, solid price. Okay. The direct neighbor actually had sold for more. And the direct neighbor set a record. It was like, it was an eye-opening price, but we actually went lower and kind of went with where, we felt not aspirational pricing was, but market pricing. Okay. And it stayed on the market 34 days. So it took until, June to go under contract. During that time, couple open houses, I think 3 open houses, whatever the case was, in 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks. Some consistent showings, all this kind of stuff, but the seller's like, hey, what's going on here? Right? Like, why no? Because of the conditioning the last 3-4 years of expecting early offers, it goes under contract at 99+% of asking. You can be on the market 30 days, 40 days, and get 98, 99% of asking price. But you've got to preempt that conversation as a knowledge broker sitting in the living room, pitching a listing, saying, hey, here are examples. And if you don't have any examples like of the last 30 days of where you've been in that situation, claw back to 2019. Well, I wasn't in the business in 2019. Just do the research on MLS and do a couple case studies. Create a PDF with 3 case studies of situations where homes in a normal market were on the market 35 days. You believed in the price. You stood by it. You turned over every stone for the seller. And then on the 36th day, it goes under contract. If you know it's the right price, then, and you've got a plan for the first 6 weeks, then stand by the price. But, preempt that with, hey, over 33% of sellers in a normal market do make a price adjustment before they actually sell. I'll know when that point is, and we'll have that conversation if we need to. But that also is a normal thing. A third of home sellers do it in a normal market. Right now, the number's 35% of sellers across the country last week are cutting price before they actually secure a contract. So it's actually up a little bit from a third.
You know what else is, just to kind of tie in, because it kind of applies on condition. There is a text group, which you have opted yourself out of, but Tom and I remain in, where one of the conversations that was
Happy birthday, Tom.
You're shaking out this week. Anyway,
oh, man.
Anyway, down in the South, they were noticing new construction. So builders saying, send a referral agreement from an agent and we'll refund the referral fee to you. And so opens up an interesting conversation, about like market conditions with inventory, days on market. Why are builders feeling like they need to start to refund the referral fees? And this was in addition to, as this whole conversation went on in this text group, somebody else said, really weird, we are seeing 5 to 8% buyer agent commission offerings on new build contracts right now, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But, really, we all know if new construction is offered in your market and you're facing a resale and all things are equal between the two, new construction is going to win every single time, right? Even if it's the most nicely updated resale home, that new construction is still going to win. But an interesting conversation about what are builders seeing and thinking, that they think that they have to offer 5 to 8% commissions and refund referral fees.
The average price across the country on new builds is $500,000. So going back to, people staying in their homes longer, not being able to afford it, that's a select portion of the market that can afford that. So builders also have a bunch of stuff in the pipeline, coming out, so that they've started, but they haven't completed. So they haven't been able to get a buyer on those. There's a Naples right here where inventory is shooting up. There's a community next to my parents' house that they've already done the site work. They've cleared. It's going to be like 2,000 homes. And the community they're in isn't even sold out right next to this community. It's like, you're going to throw up 2,000 homes right now when inventory in Naples is already back to 2019 levels. But when you've committed the money and now the clock has started, this is where builders gotten. Now we're nowhere near the levels, I want to be clear, of 06 and 07 building. I cover those charts on the hot sheet all the time. There's plenty of, but we are at the high point of the last 10 plus years. And existing home sales going up are the direct competition for new home sales. And so builders that are offering these types of incentives, this is while you have the Pulte CEO saying, hey, we want to jump into the NAR settlement because we feel like we got screwed. Shut up. You're an idiot. You've got smart builders getting ahead of it saying we need to sell quick, because if existing home sales in this country go from 600,000, which is what Altos Research reports, Realtor.com reports 750,000 plus right now is what they see with their data, active listings. It goes up to 800,000, 900,000 this year. That's a lot of competition for these new builds, and these new builds are priced higher than what the average price of existing home sales are across the country. So when you factor in affordability, yeah, I'll take new over used, but not for 80,000 more potentially. I might have to settle on the existing home sale, and I'm going to have more options as the existing home sales keep going up. It's that direct competition.
Well, it's fascinating to me that you see these people down south doing this. And we were talking about what happens up in the north, right? I think there was a gentleman from Minnesota that chimed in. I mean, I'm on our MLS right now. We've got $1 million properties. They're offering flat fee commissions less than 1% right now. And in the past, they've offered $500 co-ops. And these are large. You're talking about Pulte. I'm talking about Ryan Homes, NVR, local custom builders. So I think some of these people need to kind of get ahead of this a little bit. I think they should take note what's going on down south, because as inventory rises, I mean, you're talking about an $80,000 delta, Byron. That's the difference between someone affording a home and not. Like that's a different price range. And some of these builders, I don't know if they're quite seeing the foresight here. Now we also don't have as much new construction, so it's a little bit of a different market. But it's fascinating the difference in the markets when you look at what's happening right now and just seeing those different case studies.
Also interesting, one of the slides, back to Zillow slides, because they are fascinating. One of the other ones was talking about the price buckets that are having appreciation, and looking at the growth in luxury homes, which seem to be having more appreciation as affordability tightens up for the first-time buyers, where things seem to be blocking out. I'll send over the chart to you guys. It was the top tier homes begin to out appreciation the bottom, where people can just, once you cross that barrier of being so locked into rates, the appreciation is just so much faster in the luxury end, and it's beginning to soften in the first time buyer buckets.
If you look at this chart, there's a huge trough in the middle of 2023, and then now it's surpassed what they call the middle, whatever that data set is, and it's right at the bottom. Now the high, and I always think the high is kind of the sweet spot of the market. You're not at like that premium price point, but it's like that move up that a lot of people can usually hit if they got two incomes. There's always a sweet spot in the market like that. That's the only one ahead, and that's at 10% through 2024 versus between 7 and 8 for the other three tiers. That's very interesting, Lisa.
Yeah, it's just kind of fascinating to stop to think about how it all shakes out. And owning real estate, right? By virtue of being able to own real estate to start, it is truly, and I think will always be, the biggest dictator of long-term wealth. Getting into it is the toughest obstacle to overcome. And it's going to be so important for younger generations to understand that what their first time home looks like may not be what our first home looked like, but making the jump into owning a first home is going to be pivotal to help them move up into those higher price brackets where appreciation can continue.
I hope for everybody's sake, their first home is not what my first home looked like, on a crack riddled street, a 2-family just completely falling apart. Cost me a lot of money buying in that bad location. So I hope for everybody's sake, their first home that they're thinking about a first home isn't what my first home was. But yeah, to your point, Lisa, like even then in that market of, I guess that was 04, 05 timeframe, I ended up on a crack riddled street because I had to make extreme sacrifices. Obviously, that wasn't my home of choice. I looked at over 50 homes in that market. So I bought in one of these markets that it's not like today. It was a very different market for a lot of reasons, but it was a hard market to buy in. Okay. It was a complicated market to buy in, and there's different complications today. But I had to make exceptions. And then I ended up making a huge concession on location, a huge error, which is why, you want to make sure that you have some level of education or are working with a great knowledge broker when you're on the consumer side to make sure, like from that experience of buying 3 homes in that time frame, I never conceded location again. I conceded material facts about the house, but not on location, general location of where I want to buy. You can't move properties to certain desirable areas. And so when I would concede on the homes, but buying the locations, every time I've seen great appreciation, since then on those purchases, I've done very well. But yeah, the hard part is getting in.
I have the first home I purchased on the market right now. I bought it at the same time. It's probably going to sell for less than what I bought it for in 2004 because I conceded on location. You're absolutely right. I could not agree with you more. And I'm just like, screw it. Let's just get this thing sold. And you also want to be, if you plan to like rent it out like I did, you got to look at like the tenant laws and all that stuff. I mean, you got to be very mindful what your long-term view is. And this will work out however it works out, but it's the exact same situation, Byron. I mean, literally. Think
about that. The first house that I bought back in 04 still is not to the price that I paid for it in 04 because the area is so bad. Okay. It's such that first house, the other 2 homes I bought certainly would be over those levels, but it just took obviously COVID to get there. But this area is so bad. And so I'm a big believer in location being the number one most important part of the conversation. Now, that doesn't mean you should be constricted to a 3-mile radius, like extending into, for a buyer in this market, extending outside of their zone where they're adding 10 or 15 minutes to a drive can be okay. But you've got to be able to see a little bit into the future on what's truly the viability of this neighborhood being desirable in 10 years. I bought on, complete hope of this, a long shot movie park being built at the Norwich State Hospital across the river from the casino. Like, I was 19. I'm like, oh, that sounds like it's going to be East Coast Hollywood here. Let's go. Let's roll. This whole area is going to change, right?
I was 22, so I think you need to look at like your decision-making I mean, Byron, this is like the same story with both of us here.
But so
I bought for location, sacrificed the house, and I did okay.
And of course, Lisa's smart.
Lisa, smartest woman in real estate, Lisa Chinatti.
Just rubbing it in.
No,
thank you.
I bought the shittiest house in a bad neighborhood, or not? A shittiest house in a good neighborhood, like great schools, whatever, but legit the shittiest house.
That's a smart move if you're willing to put some sweat equity into it and do the work. I mean, you don't see people lose on those. So and there's like a chart. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever gone over this with buyers, but we look at the 4 things buyers focus on. We train on this pretty rigorously. So you got location and you got floor plan, or neighborhood and floor plan, because it costs a lot of money to change the floor plan unless you're going to start, really renovating the house. Then you've got price and condition, right? So you can compensate for condition with price. Those are negotiable. Now, the seller may not go for it, but there's the possibility to negotiate it. You're not changing the neighborhood and you're not changing the floor plan without a ton of money. So that's what knowledge brokers should be talking about. To your point, Byron, like 15 minutes is not a big deal, but here's what we want to focus on. And here's what the things we can try to change during a negotiation. That usually helps buyers compute this stuff as they're looking at properties.
And, and you sent over the article, Tom. Buyers, absolutely, housing and being able to afford housing is the top of their list. There was a Gen Z poll. Who did this? The Redfin Commission survey. And this is a Redfin Commission survey finds housing affordability number 1 voting priority for Gen Z in this year's presidential election coming up in November. So Gen Z priorities, 91% say housing affordability is the priority for them heading into the booth, the voting booth in November. Number 2 was strength of overall economy. Okay, so they've got housing affordability and strength of overall economy. It'll be interesting to see, because Gen Z, they were definitely out there campaigning for, one president 3.5, 4 years ago. They have an A/B test between the two choices, and they're saying affordability and economy are their 2 number 1 things. Then they go to education, then gun rights, surprisingly, number 4, abortion rights, number 5. Preserving democracy, number 6. Don't hang your hat on that one, guys. Just 1 and 2, affordability and economy might be better bets to preserve democracy. Then immigration, student debt.
Yeah, I can. My daughters are both Gen Z. My last one graduated.
Oh, good.
High school
what would their comments be on this? Where would their priorities sit?
It's 100% housing. I think I shared with both of you. Last summer, I was walking home with my daughter from a lovely dinner out, and I heard her sniffing, and I turned around, and she was crying, and I was like, "Oh, what is going on? We just had a lovely evening out." Hormones and all of that part of it, right? And I said, like, legit, like, what's up, kid? And she was like, I'm just so scared that I'm never going to be able to afford to buy a home, and that I don't know what I'm going to do, and if I'm ever going to get to that same point. And she was 20 years old, right? So to think about that coming from a 20-year-old in middle of her college career, that was weighing on her so heavily that walking home from a dinner in the middle of the summer, it popped into her head.
I wish I was there with you guys, because I would have said,
what would you have said?
I would have said, don't worry, Lisa will give you one of her 2 homes.
You got a legit sugar mama here, and she is your mother. Don't worry.
Well, first of all, I don't know what you said, Lisa. I definitely would have said, like, the mistake I made at 19, 20 was rushing into having to own a home. Okay, that there's value to not making. The hardest thing is getting into, your point, Lisa, but there's also a timing aspect. It doesn't have to happen at 20, right? So she's got time, and don't let the fear of the unknown kind of cripple you, because the unknown of being able to afford a home is. But that's interesting that's weighing on her so heavily that she got emotional about it, and it's obviously very important to her, and it's important to the other members of the Gen Z group. Millennials, housing affordability is number 3. They have strength of overall economy at number 1, and then they have education number 2. Here's the change up from millennials to Gen Z. A whole bunch of millennials bought in the last 3-4 years. They got locked in, during COVID. They were the biggest buying group, so they got locked in at 3%. So housing affordability, like, I don't care. I'm staying in my house. To our point about home tenure, they're staying in their house for the next 10, 12 years. They want a strong economy, number 1. And number 2, they've got kids, so they want great education.
But so I think that actually ties in. I think when we kind of think about millennials as a group in general, I question whether their tenure will totally continue, because I think a lot of those millennials bought homes in neighborhoods thinking that things were going to kind of continue along the same path, and kind of maybe did the thing that you did, which was buy in a neighborhood that was subpar. And I think the tie-in for schools is they're recognizing that those schools aren't where they need to be. They didn't
Yeah.
come up. And I think a lot of them are facing the decision that they're going to be forced to move once their children hit a certain point in their educational age.
That's happening in Philadelphia right now, where you see people buy down there, and as soon as the kids turn 5, they've got to get out of the city because unfortunately the public schools there are just not that great. I mean, I mean, you can read whatever you want about this online. It happens all the time. That's the breaking point, Lisa. You're absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why we see the Philadelphia market is a little different than the suburban market. I live 3 miles outside of Philadelphia, and we see an exodus when they're like 2 or 3, like they just want to get out and get into a school system because not everyone can afford private schools. It's very expensive.
Right.
And I think you're right, Lisa, about the tie-in there, because if education is that important, housing becomes a factor. And those 3 are way ahead of it's way ahead of immigration or preserving democracy or gun rights or abortion rights. It's way ahead of all that stuff for millennials. It's strength of overall economy, education, housing affordability, neck and neck. All 3 of those would tie in if you have school-age children. Gen X priorities. I'm in the millennial group. Are either of you guys in Gen X? Lisa, you're in Gen X, right?
I am.
I am also Gen X at the very end.
No, you'd be at the very beginning of Gen X, Tom.
Whatever. At the cutoff.
At the end.
Tom and I aren't that far apart. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at the beginning. Would be the earlier person.
Right.
I'd be at the end.
Right. You and Lisa are at the end. I gotcha. Okay. Strength of the overall economy is way out in front for Gen X. Then it goes to preserving democracy. What is wrong with your group? Preserving democracy, is that a thing? What is that? What is that? Somebody define that for me.
Exactly. These surveys, like, I mean, I don't even, it's like, I mean, I like number 1. Let's just stick with that.
Your group has education, number 3. Housing affordability is number 4 for Gen X voters.
And this is where Gen X, we're not moving anytime soon. Most of us, I'm on the tail end. Tom is on the tail end. We have settled our children into their educational systems, or they finished, right? Like my husband and I were just talking the other day. We own that single family out in the burbs, and we own the condo in the city. And the intention was always to downsize the single family in the burbs when we moved to the city. It doesn't make sense. And so we actually just came up with a plan for a full house renovation, and know that we'll be keeping that house for the next 10 to 15 years. Our interest rate is so crazy low. There's no sense. So I'm just going to make it what I want it to be, and admit that it's oversized.
And we're kind of, how much time will you spend there though, Lisa? Your place in the city is so cool. How much time will you spend in the suburbs?
In the suburbs, it's like the winter when it's snowing. And this is probably, here's the other side of it and I think a lot of my generation is going to fall into the same, maybe not to quite the same extent as me, but I will keep the place in the city probably indefinitely. The place in the suburbs, my time is very limited. It's the winter right now. But once my children finish college, I will probably move that winter time from the suburban house to wherever my kids land, and keep the suburban house as the launch pad, because I have the business out here, and until I'm done with the business.
Yep. Okay.
You mentioned education too, Byron, and I think a lot of Gen Xers have kids in school, right? I think there's a lot. I mean, that's the other factor here too, is that they're prioritizing different things because there are different spots in their life right now. Millennials had kids historically later than Gen Xers did. I mean, having a kid at like 35 is pretty normal now, but that was unheard of 10 or 15 years ago. So I think you got to look at household formation here as where the priorities are, and we're in the same boat as Lisa. I mean, our kids are in school, we're not moving. We're hunkering down, and that's kind of I think that's what you're seeing across the board. But it's millennials had kids later, and that's a factor when you move, right? Because we know diapers, diamonds, all the D's. It's all happening for them a lot later, and they held out a little longer. So that's a big change from generation to generation as well.
Yeah. Just to wrap this up, baby boomers have strength of overall economy as their number 1, and then they have preserving democracy is number 2. I'm so proud of the millennials and your children, Lisa, the Gen Zers, saying preserving democracy. Somebody define it, and then maybe we'll bump it up on the list. Like, define it for me. Give me a definition of what that horse crap means. Housing affordability and strength of the overall economy seem to be strength of the overall economy is either it's number 1 for everybody except Gen Z. It's number 2. So strength of the overall economy kind of encompasses, to me, being able to afford a house, feeling good about your paycheck, feeling good about your future, getting inflation down. Everybody's in alignment with that. And hopefully we can pull it off. And my fears of an economy just not being a great one for the U.S. consumer. Also, though, my fears of this not being that strong of an economy are kind of validated there. Every single class, Gen Z, millennial, X, baby boomers, all have it at or very near the top of their priority voting list. That tells you overall people aren't that confident in this economy.
Facts.
Or it'd be low on their list because it wouldn't be a problem to fix. Okay.
I agree. All right, I have a hard cut.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we got to go.
Goodbye.
Tom, wrap it up for us.
Well, if you want to get some knowledge, listen to this again. And you know what? If you like what you hear or you got some value out of this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It'll take you literally a half a second. You can get the bell for notifications. We're bringing this to you every week. You don't want to miss this knowledge in this shifting market. We'll catch you guys next week.
See you guys. We know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI-powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today. At BAMX, we listen to what real estate professionals want and need. That's why our platform is filled with sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business. And that's why we launched BAMX in a box with templates and scripts done for you, delivered each Friday. The best part? It's not coming from panel pontificators who bought their followers and don't sell any real estate. It's coming from top agents, team leaders, and content creators in the industry. It's education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. And now it includes editable templates and scripts so you can easily deliver that knowledge to your database. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX, into our private Facebook community, content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. Do not wait any longer. Use code KNOWLEDGEBROKERS and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Use Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX.